So we're carrying on with part two of my ghost story at the Stokely Mansion. So when I left you, I had been going through the house and working there, basically as a janitor, but I also was a music student. So I spent a lot of time there. And the ghost got to know me. And through all these series of things that were going on, got to get my attention. I decided to remote view the location and see if maybe I could connect with Mr. Toakley, because I wasn't doing it very well in three-dimensional space. So I projected there, ended up meeting Mr. Toakley. And the music building when I was there was in the 1990s. And when he was alive, when I was there, when he was alive, it was, I think, the early 30s. So he gave me a tour of the house, top to bottom. We got down into the basement, which is kind of creepy to this day. He took me through the bottom of the basement, and there was a boiler room and a bunch of like air ducts and water systems. I mean, basically the house systems were exposed and they weren't very tidy. So as you kind of navigate your way through the basement and you get yourself further and further away from the access point, at the very front of the house was this block room. Inside this block room was basically storage, cold storage, meats and vegetables and turnips and whatever, were all there. But huddled in the corner was a small child, maybe 5, 6 years old. It was hard to tell. Obviously malnourished, naked, dirty, terrified. The wide eyes were the things that still kind of stick with me to this day. And that's where Stokely basically pounced on me. Not yeah. So to this day, I'm not really sure what happened, but when I describe it to other people I told this story to someone who had experience with exorcisms. And this person told me, you were about to be possessed. So what happened was he had been really kind and welcoming and warm. And the thing that caught my attention was his smile. And it was so perfect and so white. But every once in a while, it's like I got a flash of like it was metal as opposed to normal teeth. One time he gave me a quick look while we were walking, and I thought maybe I saw shark teeth, but it just a quick flash, and then it was back to normal. And again, there was so much data coming in, it was like, I'll have to process that later type thing. But he had me trapped, just like he had that small child trapped. And I, was surrounded by the house, essentially, and was sequestered inside a room, inside a basement, inside the house. It was like one of those Russian tchotchke dolls or something. But he had me. And his eyes went black. And his mouth, his teeth became shark teeth. And his mouth became disproportionately larger than what a human would have. And then it switched over to telepathic communication. So I felt myself being pushed aside, and I felt this like coldness come over my body. And I looked at his hand, and he was like flexing it, and I looked down at my hand, and my hand was flexing, and his grin just got so much bigger. And then I got this wave of like energetic knowledge of, I'm going to step into your body and I'm going to take it over. And again, I felt more of myself falling away and more of him stepping in. And as this was going on, I'm looking at the child. The child is now completely fearful. Well, it wasn't just wide eyes. I mean, it was the whole countenance of like, oh shit, here we go again. And two things happened. One, I got the conscious awareness that it was Stokely's intention to possess my body, and he was going to continue being a pedophile in the current times, using my body to do so, which was abhorrent. The second thing that happened was physically, as I'm looking at this child, I felt myself starting to get an erection. The next thing I can tell you is that all of a sudden I was filled with sacred rage. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about those two words put together. The energy that happens in some circumstances just actually defy human language. There's just, there aren't words. There's an ineffability that happens when you have a near-death experience, or when you are remote viewing or have some sort of out-of-body experience. It's like the reason why vets talk to vets. The reason why abductees only talk to abductees, near-death experiencers only talk to near-death experiencers, because we have this bond that we don't have to explain. We know and we understand, and so you don't have to trip over that aspect. But yeah, so this sacred rage fills me up, and in my mind I just yell no at the top of my voice. And again, it wasn't my voice, it was energy, but it was like almost like a sonic boom. And it knocked Stokely back 4 or 5 steps. He was completely disengaged from me now. I was completely free, and I didn't hesitate. I got the hell out of there. Now, when you're remote viewing, especially when I was in situations where I needed to get the hell out of Dodge, you can snap back to your body almost like a rubber band being let go. But for some reason I didn't do that. I thought I was still in physical reality, so I was navigating back through the basement, was coming up the stairs, when behind me I heard this roar. It was like 1,000 angry people screaming in anger, with maybe a diesel horn and a Tyrannosaurus Rex all at the same time. But I came up the stairs, slammed the door closed, and I knew he was just going to come right through the door. And so in my mind, it was just like, I wish this door wasn't here. And it wasn't. It was like, again, in my mind, it was like that door just became a wall. And so then I put my hands up to it, just went up to the wall and just wham. And this white light kind of came through me, through my hands and into the wall. And it was like the wall pulsed white and then settled. And then I heard boom, 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 boom coming up the steps and hitting that wall. And then that roar that I heard earlier, magnify that by about 100. And he was stuck. And so at that point, then I snapped back into my bed. And because of that event, I did not do remote viewing for probably 2, maybe 3 years. Because my previous experience with remote viewing is that small kids would see me, babies sometimes would react to me, animals would sometimes react to me. But, I would say probably 9, 10 years old and older, no one bothered. So I was used to going into places and checking things out and being unseen and unperturbed. Ghosts don't follow those rules. They know you're there, and it's almost like meeting them in 3D space. So when I snapped back and had that happen, it took me a while to process everything that was going on. And I ended up writing about it as a short story. But I would say probably 99% of it, of what I wrote, was what actually happened. So I wrote the story for a class assignment, handed it in to my Catholic college English professor. Next day, he's like, hey, John, why don't you come by the office? I'm enough of a Scorpio / miscreant / shit stirrer that whenever authority figures ask me to come to the office, I know it's usually not a good thing. I certainly have seen the dean of students a few times. But yeah, so got to his office, and he's like, "This really happened to you?" And I kind of hemmed and hawed around it, and then finally, yeah, that happened to me. He kind of leaned back into his chair. He goes, "Yeah, I heard this place had some ghosts and was haunted, but I had no idea." And so I told him a little more of what my voice teacher had told me, and how, she was very nonchalant about it, and, they had some sort of relationship where, he kept an eye on her, but they really didn't kind of interface. Whereas, boy, did we interface. So he asked me a little more detail of about, well, what is this remote viewing, and how long you've been doing this, and get a little more background on me. I guess trying to determine whether I was insane or not. But he kind of mulled it over, and then finally was like, "Well, John, I'll give you these 2 pieces of advice. I would not turn this story in. I'll give you a day to give me something else." And he says, "The other thing, if you want to graduate from this college, I wouldn't show this story to anybody." So I had a saying, cooperate and graduate. It was more along the lines of, being a rebel rouser and, certain professors having dalliances that they shouldn't have, or a professor with an alcohol problem breaking into the school kitchen and taking out, these huge wine bottles. Yeah, cooperate and graduate. So I'm like, all right, cooperate and graduate. So I buried the story and didn't tell it, didn't share it for a long, long time. But I would definitely try to pick up the pulse of other people. They'd tell me their ghost stories, and it was like, doing your remote viewing? It was interesting also the number of people that it's like they find their silo and they just stick to it. You talk to somebody about a near-death experience, and they've had one. Oh yeah, they're all in. But then you talk to them about, ghosts or UFOs or cryptids or non-local consciousness, and if it's something that's not in their wheelhouse, they'd be like, oh, you're crazy. Okay, whatever. Earth is a smorgasbord, man. There's so many things, there's so many realities just interwoven. Just picking at a thread or two isn't the whole picture. But I digress. So yeah, I sat in that story for a very long time. I've only met 2 or 3 other people who I could share this story with in its entirety. And one medium, I'll get psychic / channel, where a psychic picks up on information from outside themselves, whereas a channel actually lets something in and then lets that being speak. But we got to talking after I had a reading from her, and I just felt a kinship to her. And so I told her, I said, if I really want to test the waters with somebody, I'll give them this phrase. I astral project back to a previous life. I introduce myself to that previous life. I explain to them why they are about to pass away or why they're about to make their transition. I offer them Reiki to calm them as they make their transition. And I explain why this transition is necessary for our soul's continued development. And then after I ease them through their transition and into the tunnel of light, then I come back. And that was the first time someone said to me, oh, you're a shaman. It doesn't feel like that's the right word, but I have no idea what to call myself. I do use shamanic practice. There's some mystic things that I borrow. There's some Wiccan things that I borrow. There's some Freemasonry things that I borrow. Indigenous people things that I borrow. I borrow from a lot of things. And so that's why I choose to identify myself as an alchemist. Because in my mind, an alchemist is someone who takes things from the environment around them, combines them in such a way that it makes them into something else. Almost like synergistic effect, when the result is greater than the sum of the parts. And that's kind of what I feel I'm doing now. Now that I've had these myriad of experiences, and now that I'm in my 50s, it feels like the things that I've been learning all my life were like a foundation. Then once I learned to break down the silos and mix it all together, then that's when it really got interesting. And then to make it even more interesting, let's throw in a near-death experience and give you just a whole new operating system. Same old meat suit, different operating system. So that's my whopper of a ghost story, to have a ghost pester me both in 3D space and also in, I don't know, trans-dimensional reality, imagination. The thing where I can go with the imagination is that I got some vertical experiences while I was remote viewing. Turns out there was a safe in the upstairs office, and you actually had to go into a closet, turn to face the closet, and there was a panel there, and you move the panel aside, and then there was a small circular safe with a black dial there in the middle. The curious thing that happened was that maybe 2 years later, the house is already on the Indiana Historical Registry, but they turned it into a decorator show home, and you do a tour of these show homes, and I don't know who gets the proceeds from this, but decorators come in, they do their vibe and whatever. So during the process of this, someone got the interest, I guess, of actually cracking the safe and getting into it. And there was a much larger safe downstairs. It looked like a closet door, and you open up the door and it's a huge freaking safe. And I don't know which safe was open, but so they had a display cabinet, a glass cabinet with different photos at different stages of the house's development. But one of them was an undated photo, and it had a picture of a Teddy Roosevelt looking guy sitting in a leather winged back chair and looking like the Lord of the Manor. And standing next to him was an unidentified male child, dressed in like a Newsies type outfit, the 19th century, the big floppy hat off to the side, and pants with not quite lederhosen, but had like the strappy thing to hold your pants up, and the long sleeve shirt. He did not look happy to be in that picture. And the story that was being told was that malnutrition was definitely a problem during the Depression, and Stokely was considered such a wonderful person because he would get oranges and would give out oranges to help prevent scurvy. And so that was his deal. The kids would come to the house and he'd give them oranges. And so the parents would tell their kids to go see Stokely so that he could give them oranges. And so I wonder just how many kids he abused. And the parents actually made them go for oranges. So yeah, vertical experience. It makes things interesting. But yeah, it was It was one of the first times, like I said, that I had a ghost encounter while awake and also while remote viewing. And it taught me that I needed to learn how to defend myself in that space. And between being 20-something versus 50-something, I've picked up a few tricks along the way. And I'm glad that I don't hear people mixing their silos. And when I hear people talking about remote viewing and, oh, I want to go do this, that, and the other thing, one of the first things I tell them is practice your self-defense first. Have some tricks up your sleeve, and practice them before you go. Know them before you need them. I don't know if everyone would be so lucky to have that sacred rage to show up. I've been lucky / stubborn enough that I've put myself in a couple other situations where that sacred rage was necessary, to the point where I've had angels show up and say, dude, you gotta stop this. And yeah, that's a story for another time. But anyway, so there is my whopper of a ghost story. I hope you enjoyed it. Do me a favor, punch some likes, make some comments, and I'd like to tell more of these stories. After 30-some years of doing this, I got a handful. But I'm also working 45, 50 hours a week doing a database programming. So I'd love to be able to tell more of these stories and answer more questions, as opposed to being a Pavlovian key pusher. So anyway, thanks for listening. Have a great day. Bye.